Welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Tuesdays are my request evening. Thursdays are stories I like to bring to you. If you would like to join my Patreon, it's patreon.com/JessRose5472. Just a little bit of a heads up. It is a story of a child. So I completely understand if that's not it's something you can stick around for. Completely understand. But if you can, I'm going to begin now. So, thank you so much. So, okay, as the title said, it's 3 Hours of Hell, the devastating Christopher Gardner story. Okay? Oh, God, it's just awful, but I haven't seen an awful lot on this story at all, which I thought is really sad, really sad. It does go back to the 90s, and yeah, I'm going to bring it to you now. So, Christopher Irwin Gardner was born on the 18th of May 1994 in Sullivan County, New York. His mum, Tracy Ann Irwin. Now, Dad, don't know anything about. He wasn't on the scene. I have looked, but I don't know if, from what I can gather, he didn't have anything to do with Christopher, or he certainly didn't for long. Okay. Now, Christopher did have one younger sibling, and I know I've seen a photo, but I couldn't even tell what the sibling was, whether it was a younger brother or younger sister. But the sibling isn't involved in the story this evening, so I wouldn't give any names out, even if I found them. So that's his sibling. Now, like I say, Christopher didn't see his dad. Adorable little boy. But when I say adorable, there's 2 pictures. Just two. Just 2 little photos of this little boy. Big blue eyes, brown curly hair. Cute little lad. Holding, who I believe is the younger sibling as a very young baby. And in the picture, I believe Christopher's about 2. Now, in that picture, he has got a mark on his head here. Now, I don't know where that mark comes from. I just will say that if you do go away to have a look at a picture of him, he has got a mark on his forehead here. All right. Such an adorable little boy. It was said he was very happy-go-lucky. He did have a possible learning difficulty, disability, sorry. But just a very happy little lad. Now, we get to 97/1998, okay? Now, Tracy was, at this point, in a new relationship with a man called William Banker, who was 33, okay? Tracy, I don't know if I've said 27, all right? Now, at this point, Christopher is 3 years old, okay? Now, that's all I have on history of this little boy. That's it. That's the history I have on him, which is as heartbreaking as this story is. That's all I have. It's awful. But we go to April the 1st, 1998. Okay? Like I say, he's a month away from his 4th birthday at this point, so he's still 3 years old. Now, we've got a man called Michael Shabbat. Alright? Now, Michael is a paramedic, okay, and at this point on the 1st of April, he's visiting his mum. He's not working, he's visiting his mum, okay? And he does that on his days off, always goes round to visit his mum. And as he was leaving, he notices that his mum's neighbour, okay, was outside pacing up and down, all right, and he noticed she sort of had a cordless phone in her hand, but she wasn't on the phone. And he believes she looked a little bit distressed. He's a paramedic. It's certain things, you know, he recognises certain flags. And he looked, and it looked like there's something really wrong here. So he puts on his uniform. He puts his uniform on, and he goes to ask her if she's okay. All right. Now, the woman in question is Tracy, Christopher's mum. All right. Now, she was on her front porch. Okay. Now, when you say front porch, it looked like the home itself. The pictures I've looked at, it looked like a very close estate. It didn't look like a mobile home. I will say that, and I'll explain. You'll see in a minute why it can't be a mobile home, but it kind of looked like that in the picture. And the porch was like decking outside with a fence round it. So I just want you to imagine that. So you've got the door that opens, you've got decking that comes out, and a fence round it. And on the left hand side, you've got steps that lead up onto this decking. Okay, so she's on that front porch. Okay, so he walks up the steps, okay, and sees her, but as he looks, there's a table on this porch, and lying on the table, okay, he sees little Christopher. Now, he doesn't obviously know little Christopher, but he sees this little young lad lying on the table, and who he believes is his mum, is just pacing around the porch with a phone in her hand that she's not actually on. All right. Now, Christopher appeared to be half conscious. All right. And as Michael cast his gaze over little Christopher, and don't forget Michael's paramedic, so as he looks Christopher sort of up and down as he approaches him, he notices that this little boy has got injuries all over him. Okay? From what he can gather, these injuries are head to toe. This boy's really injured. Okay? So Christopher's got a huge bruise on his forehead, and there's blood coming out of his ears, his nose, and his mouth at this point. Now remember, Tracy, Mummy Dearest, is just walking around with a phone. She's not using it. Okay? So, like I say, he's got bruises all over him, plus a very deep bite mark on his right arm. A human bite mark on this 3-year-old baby. Okay? The bruises and lacerations, from his quick glance over Christopher, they look old and new. So there's some in the in the form of their healing, but there's some that look brand new. Okay. Little Christopher was dying. Okay. It's a month before his 4th birthday, and this little boy is dying on a table on his porch, and his mother, there's the exclamation marks, is it but his mother hasn't phoned anyone yet. She hasn't phoned for help yet. This little boy is dying. Okay. And what Tracy tells him, look, he fell down the stairs. you know, straight away. He fell down the stairs. And this paramedic's looking at this little boy in front of him and he's like, I don't think so. But the actual landlord or landlady, as you say, of Tracy and William, it's actually her who ends up calling 911, okay, on the say-so of the paramedic, okay, Michael. So, Christopher's flown to St. Francis Hospital in New York. And he fought so hard to live. This little boy did. He fought for 7 hours to live. And they fought to save him. But, like I say, around 7.5 hours, he lost his fight. And he passed away. This little 3-year-old, little cute little fella. He died. Alright. So the police are called, okay, and they begin to talk to Tracy and William, alright. And what they noticed quite quickly, there's no emotion. There's no emotion from either of these two over her son's death and someone who she basically said William was a father figure for Christopher. So considering he classed himself as a father figure, this new boyfriend, and his actual mother, that there was no emotion from them. And the police, of course, they're suspicious anyway, but this really doesn't help. And the pair themselves just continued saying he fell down the stairs. This is their reasoning for how injured this little boy is. He fell down the stairs, right? So the pair are arrested, along with the other woman, Gianna Lynn Lester, who's 31, who's the landlady I told you about, who was the lady who called 911, okay? Now, her name's Gianna, but they call her Jeannie, okay? Now, the home they all lived in was a double-level property. That's what I was saying about the picture. It's obviously can't be a mobile home that I know of. It's just the picture and how it looks to me. But it's a double-level property, and she also lived there with her husband and her kids, okay? I believe she was upstairs, and William, Tracy, little Christopher, and his little sibling are downstairs. That's how I've worked out the living situation, okay? Now, the thing with this house, what I noticed straight away was the amount of rubbish piled up outside the house. Just bags and bags and bags of rubbish by the stairs. Just looks scruffy. Basically, really scruffy. That's how this house looked to me on first glance. Okay. Now, I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. But Jeannie was there when Christopher had been hurt. So all three continue to say this little boy fell down the stairs. Now, I've said it to you probably 4 times, and this is what they keep saying. It was the stairs. He fell down the stairs. He tripped down the stairs. This is all 3 of them. Okay? Now, the police eventually find out what really happened. Alright? So, it actually started when Christopher, let me mention again, who's 3 years of age. He's a baby. He's a toddler. Alright? He took a sweetie. They're saying he took a piece of candy, but he took a sweet. Basically took a sweet. Okay? That was it. A sweetie. That was it. That was his bad thing that he did. He took a sweetie. Alright? And when William asked him, did you take the sweet? Little Christopher innocently replied, well, yeah. William lost his mind. He lost his absolute mind over this sweetie that's gone missing. This sweet. He loses it completely. Him and Jeannie, the neighbour, the landlord, them two, right, grab little Christopher because of his, his bad thing of robbing the sweetie. And they grab him and they drag him into the bathroom. Right. They close the bathroom door behind them and they begin to beat little Christopher brutally. Alright. And this continued for an hour. Alright. And in that time, little Christopher was being punched, he's being kicked, he's being dragged around the bathroom, screamed at. For an hour. Okay. Then Jeannie opens the bathroom door and she leaves. She goes back to her own place. Okay. And you might be like, where's Tracy? Mum, where is she? Where could she be? Where's her landlord and her son's stepdad beating her son in the bathroom? Where? She can't possibly be in the property. She can't possibly know about this. Oh, but she did. She was there. She was in the living room while this was going on. And when Jeannie left, then Tracy gets up and she goes into the bathroom. Alright. She'd been listening to her baby's screams. And then she goes in to join in. And her and William continue punching, kicking, dragging around this little baby in the bathroom. And for an over further 2 hours, they continue to beat this little boy. To cover his screams, they shove a dirty sock in his mouth. Okay? And every now and again, they'd fancy a cigarette. So they'd stop and have a cigarette. And then when they'd finished the cigarette, there's no ashtray. So they put it out on Christopher and burn holes into his stomach. At one point, little Christopher, he pulls the dirty sock out of his mouth, okay, and he tries to defend himself. He's 3 years old, but he tries against these absolute cretins. He tries to defend himself and he pulls the sock out of his mouth and he bites one of them. Little Christopher does. So then they both begin biting him back. And these bites drew blood. Severe bites that were breaking his skin. And then while he was on the floor, Tracy decides to stand on him. She puts a whole weight on his little stomach while he's on the floor. Then he was picked up and threw into the bathtub. The bathtub had been filled with cold water, freezing cold water. And he was thrown into it. And then he was dragged out. And then he was splashed with boiling hot water, burning him severely. He was thrown around the bathroom. And then the other rooms in the house hitting the walls as they threw him. And then I think as just as heartbreaking as all of this is, their excuse that he fell down the stairs, it wasn't 100% a lie. Not 100%. Because they threw him down the stairs. And then they brought him back up. And they threw him down the stairs again. Then they brought him back up. And they threw him down the stairs again. He's 3 years old. He was continually punched and kicked, like I say, around the house. They still weren't happy and they began whipping him with a belt. And by the end, this was covered in his blood, a leather belt. And like I say, all of this went on for 3 hours. 3 hours this went on for. Little Christopher. Now, if you remember what I said when Michael, the paramedic, came across little Christopher lying on that table outside, he was half conscious at that point. He was still conscious. Which means that he was conscious for all of it. For every punch, every kick, the cigarettes being put out on him, being flung down the stairs time and time again. He was awake for all of it. Oh, God. We get to the 2nd of April, 98. Okay. The 3 of them, Tracy, William and Jeannie, were all charged at the time with 2nd-degree murder. Okay. But then the autopsy came in. Alright, of little Christopher. And this autopsy, the pathologist said it took him hours to complete this autopsy. This little boy's 3, he's tiny. But it took hours to complete it. Now, like I say, there was old and new injuries all over his little body, which shows that he'd been getting abused for quite a lot of time. Okay? Now, he had 97 separate injury sites. Okay. He had a broken arm from being thrown down the stairs. He had a fractured jaw from being punched in his face. Cigarette burns all over his torso. Severe bite marks all over him. From that one bite that when he was trying to defend himself, they thought they should bite him everywhere. He had a lacerated liver. He had a collapsed lung. His entire body, all his skin was discoloured. It was red and blue all over him. Okay. There was also bruising and lacerations to his little private parts. Oh. And then there were severe injuries to his rear end. A sign of a sexual assault. Oh. He was a baby. He was 3 years old. Absolute. Ugh. And this wasn't a burst of rage in a one-off attack that lasted 3 hours, but it wasn't a one-off. You know, this had been going on for a while, to the point where, what do you know, calls had been made to child services. Aren't they always? The calls had been made by neighbours and mandated reporters. They'd been phoning social services about not only this child, little Christopher, but also Jeannie's kids who were living in the same property. The neighbours would see the kids outside. They'd see little Christopher. They'd see her kids. And they'd say that they looked bedraggled, they looked neglected. They were also overheard screaming at the kids while the kids were outside. So they're not, it's not like it's happening inside and a neighbour just happens to be walking past and can hear something. No, no, no. They were quite brazenly calling these, oh, the names they were calling these kids. I can't even, I don't want to repeat them. Just for anyone to hear. Just awful, awful. So when we get to the trial, okay, the DA at that point was a man called Stephen Lungan, okay. Now, these three, I'll keep saying cretins because I can't call them animals. I made my mind up to not call anyone an animal again on this channel because it just doesn't. They're not animals. Animals wouldn't do this. Well, these three cretins, they pled not guilty. They had the audacity to plead not guilty to murder. Well, the DA, like I say, Stephen Lungan, he wanted the death penalty on these three. He was going for the death penalty on this. Now, to go for the death penalty, you have to prove extenuating circumstances, i.e. torture. You have to be able to prove that, okay? And it's quite hard. It's quite hard to prove that to be able to go for the death penalty, all right? So what he did, now don't forget, this is the 90s. Technology wasn't what it is now. So what he invoked was the help of a place called the NLECTC, okay? And that stands for the National Law Enforcement of Corrections Technology Centre. It was established in 1994, all right? And what it was, oh, it's so sad. It's so sad, and it does remind me of baby Brianna Lopez, okay? What they did, they used new technology at the time to basically remove all of Christopher's injuries, nearly 100 of them. And they said it was really, it was the time that was put into it because of just how many injuries were on this little, tiny little body. 100 injuries. And they removed them all and they showed the photo of little Christopher at the trial, okay? And what they did, what they wanted to prove was a timeline of how each injury would have been inflicted in a sense. So what they did was they showed little Christopher and they said when all the injuries were taken away, he just looked like a little baby boy. Because don't forget, these people have only seen him in this state that these three had inflicted to him, you know, had put him in. And so to remove every injury, they were like, he just looked like a normal little boy. And then, for the jury, one by one, they started putting the injuries back on Christopher's body, one by one, to show just how much what they had to have done to have inflicted this damage. So by the end of, would you call, I don't know if you call it a presentation, I don't know what you would call it, but by the end you've got then Christopher in the state they'd left him in. And I just thought, oh, it must have been devastating for everyone in that courtroom. You think, wouldn't you? You would think you would, oh, you'd cry from beginning to end. No, not tracing William, no remorse, no sign of remorse. how how could you? I don't know this little boy. I of course, no one will ever get to meet him, and and you can feel just so upset at the thought of that, and the thought of having to sit and look at that happen, and and knowing that it was these people who'd inflicted it, and just nothing from them. Oh, just awful. They did this to try and prove the torture element needed for the death penalty. But they didn't feel remorse. But what they did feel after the recreation that they'd done, they knew they'd had it. They knew they were going for the death penalty. So they changed their mind, did William and Tracy, after the recreation that the DA had set up. And they changed their plea to guilty to first degree murder. Okay? Now, for him to accept that plea from them and not pursue the death penalty, the agreement was it's life without parole. You don't try and get parole, it's life, no parole. And that they pled to that. Okay? So, but through all of it, there was no remorse whatsoever. In fact, William, as he was being taken down, gave the middle finger to the DA in sort of, rebelliousness. You've just been sentenced to life for murdering a 3-year-old baby. And you're showing some sort of defiance by putting your finger up at the DA. Like you're a teenager just being caught, I don't know, robbing a car or something. It was just, that to me was just like, oh my God, it's just disgusting. Now, you might be saying, well, what about Jeannie, the landlord? What about her? What happened to her? Let's not forget, she was in that bathroom for an hour before Mummy Dearest went in. Why she was in there, I don't know. Why was the landlord involved in? Why was she involved in that? But judging on the fact that child service has been called for her own kids, I would say she wasn't great with them either. But what she got, she pled guilty to beating him for an hour, but she left, didn't she? She left. So she pled guilty to 4th degree assault. And do you want to know what she got? She got 7 years. She only did 4. She was 8 in 2002. Now, okay, you might have got the main culprit, you might say, and they've got life without. But to go from life without parole to someone else doing 4 years, I didn't quite get that. I didn't quite understand how they came up with that deal. I don't get that. So, yeah, that, I don't know. But yes, she was out after 4 years, all right? Now, as it always is, but a bill was put forward for harsher penalties for child abuse, okay? It was dismissed. It was dismissed. This is obviously in the 90s. It was dismissed. It was held for months and then years, and then eventually it just got dismissed. Like it was nothing. And mandated reporters were losing their mind. They were like, why mandate us to call? If you're not going to follow it up, why are we doing it? If we have to call when we see a child in danger, why is no one following it up? What's happening? What's going on? So the community was in uproar over it. Okay. But I've seen someone put changes will be made, or we hear it all the time, don't we? We hear it all the time. And when I go back, and you could be like, oh, it's because it was back then. No, it's not because it was back then. It's happening right up to now. It's like, I just don't understand. I never get it. I always get so confused. It's like, why? Now, okay, we know that I've said many times that as annoyed as I get at the social services and the authorities that are involved with these children, especially when they are involved in these cases, I do get very annoyed. But I also always say, we know who the culprits are. They're the real murderers. They're where the not wrath, but the disgust should be pointed to, etc., etc., etc. Okay, I've said that many times. But today I heard a creator say something and it made me stop. It did make me think, because I've heard myself say it many times, I know that more could be done, but let's not forget who the real murderers are. I've said it many times, I know I have. But this creator said something and I was a bit like, do you know what? And it's not anything, oh God, I've lost my wording. It's nothing crazy. It just kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit, because he said, yes, it's the people who commit the crime that are to blame. Yes, they are, which is what I say. But he says, but if you were hurt or in trouble, so let's say you had, I don't know, got hit by a car on the road, okay? Or someone had just mugged you. Just any of these sort of scenarios, okay? You wouldn't expect a doctor or a policeman to just step over you and go, well, it wasn't me that inflicted that, so nothing to do with me, and walk away. You wouldn't expect that to happen, because it's their job. It's their job. They've got a job to do, and that job is to help you, even though they didn't inflict whatever injury it may be on you, or they didn't, or whatever crime it might be. Like, the police didn't mug you, but they're going to be there to help you on the other side of that. Or they didn't hit you with a car, the paramedics didn't, but they're going to be there to help you when you're lying on the floor. That's their job. And child services' job is to protect these children. And it just stopped me in my tracks a little bit. Because not that I've ever sided with the child services by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always sort of been like, yeah, okay, I understand, but let's not forget who did it. And I suppose I'm still saying that to a degree, but it did make me think. So they are getting paid. They're getting paid to protect children. That's their whole job. And they're not doing it. And yeah, it really made me think. And it sounds very obvious. And although I knew it, to have it worded that way, it was like, ugh. Yeah, they're not doing their job, are they? Right. Little Christopher was buried at Hillside Cemetery in Middletown, New York City. Little Christopher this year, he would have been 30 years old this year. And he didn't even make it to 4. Oh, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking. But that was 3 hours of hell. The devastating Christopher Gardner story. Oh, God. Oh, just so sad. Just for what again? I'm so sick of these cases when I'm like, at the end, I'm like, what? For what? And in this one, because he had a sweet, because he took a sweet, I don't even know how they repeated that in their confessions or their sort of justifications for what they did. He stole a sweet and that's what triggered it off. It's mental. It's absolutely mental. But thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Tuesdays are my request evening. Thursdays are stories I like to bring to you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It'd be great if you could come and join us on the live. But yeah, I'll be back on Thursday. So thank you so much again. Oh, and if you'd like to join my Patreon, it's patreon.com/Jess Rose 5472. But thank you so much again. Thank you. Take care. Take care.